Let me take you back to E3 of 2014. Xbox was up to the plate and something special was going to get shown off. A little indie game called Cuphead, inspired by cartoons from the 1930s or so. I didn't see the initial reveal. This was before I started watching E3s, and really before I started paying attention to video game events. No, I found out about it around 2016, which meant I still had a year of waiting to go, because this game took a ton of time to get put out, which, yeah, no shit, having well-made animation of this aesthetic for an entire game's length definitely takes time. I figure a lot of people know the story at this point, but the hell that the developers had to go through just to get this game out, which then resulted in the sheer explosive level of popularity the game received, is really incredible, and I imagine inspiring to other up-and-coming indie devs. I was heavily anticipating this game in 2017, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get my hands on it until Christmas. But you know what I was also anticipating that year that I bought instead of Cuphead? The Sonic Forces! That was a long few months. But when I got to Christmas and was finally able to play the game, man, there was nothing else I touched for a while. Well, besides South Park: The Fractured Butthole, which I also got for that Christmas, but we're not talking about that game. I spent so much time having fun and dying to the bosses, running through the run and gun stages, and even getting 200%, which is something I've done multiple times. Needless to say, I've played the hell out of this game, and I wanted to go back to it for a review. Not so much to see how it stacks up, because if it isn't obvious already, play this game if you for some reason haven't, but more so just for personal enjoyment and to have a fun time. So with that, let's get into it. So our story follows these two cups named Cuphead and Mugman, one of which has a gambling addiction and the other likes drinking out of the nondescript liquid in his head, so we're not off to a good start. Cuphead and Mugman stumble into the Devil's Casino. So a normal casino. Cuphead finds himself on a good winning streak at the craps table. Why is this game called craps? And seeing this, the devil himself barges in and decides to raise the stakes. If Cuphead wins one more time, he gets everything in the casino, but if he loses, the devil gets their souls. Cuphead agrees and decides to have another throw, but get this, he loses, and after pleading for a bit, the devil decides to have them do his dirty work and collect the soul contracts from other debtors around Inkwell Isle. And since they don't have any other options, the brothers set out to get the deed done by getting the deeds. That's the gist of it. Go into each world, beat all the bosses, get their contracts that you then give to King Dice, and he'll allow you into the next world to do the same thing all over again. You mostly just jump and shoot through these places, but you also have a parry that you can do on pink attacks to neutralize them. There's these cards that are filled by parrying attacks and hitting enemies, and each card filled allows you to do an EX attack. You also have a dash that I think is mostly meant to be used for platforming, because I didn't really need to use it that much in battle. Finally, you also have a button to swap to your secondary weapon, and a button that holds you in place to aim more accurately. Overall, I think this game controls great. There was never a point where I thought I got damaged or died unfairly due to control, and I think that's really important for difficult games like these. Just play Ghosts and Goblins for 5 seconds and you'll see what I mean. That's not all though. We also have shops that allow you to buy different weapons that have different properties, as well as charms with different abilities. As for shots, you start with the basic pea shooter that's a good all-rounder. You'll probably be using it the entire game. There's also the spread shot that you'll probably get next. Has a shotgun spread and shit range, but if you get in your enemy's face, you can do some good damage. Really good for bosses that have phases in the background, so you can just stand inside of them and let it rip. There's the chaser shot that, personally, I don't like too much. It homes in on enemies, which sounds really good, but the damage on it is awful, and if the boss has any minions like the dog balloons when you fight Beppy the Clown, it's prone to getting distracted. The Lobber is a bit weird. It has a slower fire speed, and since it fires down at an angle, it makes it a bit awkward to hit things, but to compensate, it has really good damage, and for bosses that attack from under you, like the second phase of Grim Matchstick, it basically only has upside since the angle works to your advantage. The Roundabout is another weird one. It goes forward a bit and then comes back around, meaning that it's best to fire it away from where you're aiming at. It's not something I use all the time, but it has its uses, especially if you're moving away from the boss. Also, I don't know if this is just me, but it seems to fill your cards a bit faster than some of the other weapons, but I could just be seeing things. Finally, there's the charge shot, which trades out the rapid fire all the other weapons have for a single hard-hitting projectile. I found it's good for bosses that usually only give you an opening for a short time, so you can spend the dodge time charging up. Overall, I really like the weapons in this game. I find they all have their uses against different bosses, and they prevent things from getting stale. Except for the chaser, because from what I can get, it's for people that want to focus on dodging instead of attacking, but since its damage is so bad, it just means they'll be dodging for longer and have more time to get hit, which just kind of defeats the purpose. Then there's the charms, which are pretty cut and dry. The smoke bomb is the only charm you should ever be using. It makes you invincible during your dash, meaning you can use it to make some great dodges. The heart charms may increase your health, but makes you do less damage, which seems pointless, since the fights will go on for longer, meaning that extra health won't do much for you, since you'll lose it naturally with the longer fight length. Although if you really hate yourself, you can have fun on the bosses using the chaser with the twin hearts, which is something I did because, I mean, what else do I have going on? The Perry Sugar and Whetstone, I think that's how you say it, are also both useless since they only work for your first parry, and in the Whetstone's case, I don't know why you ever want to get that close to a boss or enemy just to do damage. Finally, there's the coffee, which automatically fills your cards, which is something that'll happen naturally through the fight by damaging the boss, so it's probably the most pointless out of all of them. The final unlockables are the super attacks. In each world there's one of these Mausoleum levels where you have to defeat a bunch of ghosts using your parries. Now, if you have one of these equipped while your cards are maxed out, you can do a super attack. You get 3 of these in the game. The first is easily the most useful, just a giant milk laser. Yeah, someone probably calls it that, jeez. It does a lot of damage, and it's probably the one you'll be using for most of the game. The second is an invincibility power-up. It doesn't last super long, but I did find uses for it that I'll get into a bit later. The third is this ghost you can guide around that I don't like and never use. Over time, you'll probably find your favorite combo of equipables, but you should definitely experiment from time to time, since different bosses will probably require different weapons. Not different charms though, only use the smoke bomb. That being said, it won't carry you to victory, cause as you probably know at this point, the game's pretty difficult. Each of the bosses have different patterns, widely varying attacks, at least 3 phases apiece, and on top of that, they might even have their own gimmicks, like doing the whole boss above a bottomless pit, or having to work with this platform on train tracks. Some of the bosses even take place in this airplane and can potentially have death written on the entire screen, and once we get to Dr. Cal's robot, the game just turns into a bullet hell, like holy shit. But man, I kept coming back every single time. I learned more of the patterns. I got to phases with more health than I had before. The biggest motivator to go again one more time is that you get shown how far you've gotten in the fight when you die. And man, when you die and find out you weren't even close, or dying and finding out I was just an ant's taint hair away from beating the boss, it doesn't matter about getting to the next level anymore. Now it's personal. Yeah, you'll keep dying, but it'll all be worth it when you finally hear that. Oh yeah, there's also run and gun stages. Only 2 in each world, so 6 total. I think these are pretty fun, but not as fun as the bosses. Still good though. Except for the stages in World 3, cause Rugged Ridge goes on a bit too long for my taste, and Perilous Pier is my worst nightmare. The section with the octopus gives me an aneurysm. I'm happy the run and gun stages are here since they serve to be an okay pace breaker, plus they're how you get coins for the shop, so they're pretty important, but I definitely like the bosses more, and personally, I think the airplane stages were a good enough pace breaker already. Another thing this game has that you can work on is the ranking system. For bosses, getting a high rank is all depending on being able to get through it in relatively good time without getting hit using at least 6 cards on your super meter and while parrying at least 3 pink attacks. There's also the skill level stars, but I'm gonna be honest, I've never not gotten all of them, so I'm not sure if it's possible to lose out on these. If you get gold in all these categories, then you'll be rewarded with an A+. While you don't need to get A+ ranks for anything, Gaining A-, A, or A+ on all the stages will let you use this filter. I mean, it's not worth it, but I at least think it doesn't look half bad, and plus, now all parryable attacks are orange flavored. The run and gun stages also have their own ranking criteria, but it doesn't really matter because the best rank on these stages ignores all of this. The best rank in the run and gun stages is the P rank. Hold your explosive laughter, please. The P stands for Pacifist, because you have to get through each of these stages without firing your weapon once, which, funnily enough, actually gives some more usefulness to the Heart Charm, since you'll never need to deal with their damage penalty, and it also means that the only special attack you should be using is the Invincibility power-up. The problem comes in with some of the stages that have mini-bosses, which, depending on what mini-boss specifically you're fighting, could be bypassed by simply taking a hit, but some of them, like this acorn machine, have to be special and have an invisible wall preventing you from just going forward. Now you gotta get creative, like using the extra jump the invincibility gives you at just the right time, or smoke dashing past the bosses when they leave an opening. The smoke bomb in particular is damn near essential depending on what stage you're playing. I think this is a really cool and unique way of increasing the challenge on these stages, although again, really was a pain in the ass on the World 3 stages for some reason. I remember when I first did these, the pier level had me stuck for multiple hours, but when I played through it for this video, it was the ridge level that gave me shit. Clearing all the run and gun stages with a P rank gets you this other filter that, like the other filter, isn't really worth it, but unlike getting all the A ranks, I recommend you do this anyway, cause the way in which it shakes up the stages is worth it on its own. The black and white filter is thematically appropriate and looks really nice in this game, but take a wild guess where this would affect a part of the game where colors are important. This filter creates a new game of, what the hell can I parry? Yes, keep jumping at those flying punches, Mugman. One of them is bound to work eventually. I think now, though, we should continue to the last part of the game, so let's get to that. After you get all the soul contracts, it's time to get back to the casino. We get to fight King Dice, and even though we still got the devil after this, for all intents and purposes, King Dice is the true final boss. He has one gimmick, this god-forsaken board. Here's how this works. There's a die in the middle here that can roll 1 through 3, and you make your roll by parrying it. Thankfully, the die is timing-based, so if you're good, you do have full control over what you roll. Each space has its own thing going on. The most important are the numbered ones. Each numbered space has a mini-boss you need to face, making for a total of 9 mini-bosses. However, with skillful dice rolling, you can fight a minimum of 3. The game also selects 3 random boss spaces to have a heart on them. Landing on one of these gives you an extra hit point, so usually the bosses you tackle will be based on which ones have the heart spaces. We also have safe spaces, which are pretty self-explanatory, and your goal is to roll to the end of the board, where hitting the finish space starts the battle against King Dice. But some sick bastard on the development team decided to put a start over space right before the finish space, and if you land on it, it's back to the start with you. Thankfully, boss spaces count as safe spaces once they're cleared, but that still doesn't change that if you fuck up your roll once, that's another boss you gotta go through before the big man himself, and guess who messed up the roll right at the end? Yup, I hit the restart space, and it was at this moment I decided, you know what? I've got nothing better to do with my time, need footage of all these bosses, and I'm a borderline masochist, so let's tackle all these bosses in one run, which I successfully did, by the way, so we're gonna go through all of them real quick, just to satisfy myself. Boss 1 is one of the best anti-alcoholism messages I've ever seen, because I hate these things. I always get tripped up by the alcohol on the ground while I'm busy taking care of these flying nuisances. Next up is the stack of poker chips, which is actually pretty simple, just goes on a bit longer than the others. The smoke bomb makes this guy even easier. Third is this cigar guy. The fireballs he throws are a little tricky to dodge, which is the main problem, but there's also these cigarettes in the middle that make it hard to jump to another platform. Space 4 is home to the dominoes, who are really easy so long as you don't get tripped up by the spikes on the floor. These guys are usually a free pass. Number 5, the magic rabbit. If there was any other reason to use the smoke bomb, this is it. I have legitimately never dodged this attack without it. Also, this guy left me at 1 HP, meaning that I had to do 2 mini-bosses and King Dice without getting hit, so that's fun. Last one for this portion is the skeleton horse. That's probably the most forgettable out of all of them. He's one of 2 playing bosses, but he isn't that special. Our last few, starting with the roulette table, which again, reason number 69 on why you should be using the smoke bomb, because with it, this fight is a joke. Our next one, the 8-ball, is similarly extremely easy, and one of my favorites to go after, because all you need to do is dodge the projectile he sometimes throws at you, because most of the time the blocks will jump right over you. Finally, we have the monkey, and I hate this thing. To be able to hit him, you need to match these cards while he's going all over the place, and getting a match wrong will make him start moving a little faster. Meanwhile, King Dice actually isn't too bad, really. If you've gotten good at parrying, which I hope you have at this point, he shouldn't give you too much trouble. There are times when you need a dash to a parryable card, which, get this, is the only downside I've found to using the smoke bomb so far, since it makes it a little harder to judge where you're going to land. But that's like one reason not to use it, placed against 300 reasons why the smoke bombs are Lord and Savior, so who cares. Before you fight the final boss, you actually get to choose whether you join the devil or do the right thing. If you choose to join the devil, then, yeah, I don't think we got the good ending. It even boots you back to the title screen almost as if to say, stop being stupid, choose the right choice. Anyway, we fight the devil, and yeah, he throws a lot at you, but he doesn't make you fight 3 bosses before getting the privilege to fight him, so he's easier by default. That being said, though, he's probably my favorite boss in the game. It is really easy to get hit by all of his attacks, but all of it is telegraphed beforehand, so it never feels unfair, which is something the game is good about in general. I also really like his last 2 phases, since there's stuff flying all around and you need some fancy footwork to dodge attacks, as well as avoiding the falling poker chips and staying on the platforms. In the end, the 2 cups defeat the devil and burn all the contracts, releasing everyone on Inkwell Isle from their contractual obligations, thus ending the story of Cuphead. But I'll save the final thoughts for later, because we've got some other stuff to tackle. Firstly, there was a pretty good update to the game added a while back, and one of the main features for it was Mugman being a selectable character for single player, which is neat since he was originally multiplayer exclusive. On that note, this game also has multiplayer, which is pretty fun if you feel like getting someone else to experience the ass-kicking with you. I think bosses might have more health to compensate for the double players, and if both of you don't bring your A-game against these bosses, then good luck getting OK rank. Another neat thing the update added is alternative phases for some bosses. I know there's a few, but the only one I remember is against the root pack if you don't shoot the onion. But I also hate this little bastard on the ground, so I'd rather not. There is one last curveball that the game throws once you beat it, though. Expert difficulty is unlocked for all the bosses. This generally means the attack frequency and even patterns are changed, generally making for much tougher fights, although that's not always the case. I actually found the fight against Grim Matchstick to be a lot easier in expert mode than normally, because the changed movement of the clouds makes it easier to hit him. I went through all the bosses in expert mode a bit ago. They're definitely harder, but I didn't get stuck on any of them for as long as my first runs on normal. I'd chalk it up to patterns being slightly trickier, but not totally revamped, so your previous knowledge should still help you get through them. Although despite that, I don't even want to remember what Expert Mode King Dice is like. The main draw for Expert Mode is being able to get S ranks by fulfilling the criteria that would have given you an A+ in normal mode. I'm pretty sure it doesn't get you anything, but I hate myself, so I'll probably get all S ranks one of these days. I also want to highlight the music here. It's very fitting of the era, with instruments that give me a boost of energy and some great compositions all around. My personal favorites are the themes against the Phantom Express and the Devil, but of course who can forget the lovely Die House theme. Gets stuck in my head if I'm in there for only 5 seconds. Also, my god, I don't know how I haven't brought up the visuals yet, seeing as it was the big thing that drew me and a lot of others to this game. It is so beautifully created and has such lovable characters. Everything here is a total feast for the eyes, and I'm still impressed by it to the point where I even love looking at the details in the backgrounds. I also find that this kind of game, where you need to pay close attention to how the enemies telegraph their attacks, works wonderfully with this type of deliberately crafted animation. And that's all the stuff in Cuphead, and I had a very enjoyable time coming back to this game. It's something that I believe everyone should at least try, since the quality pumped into it is unmistakable. Besides, there's no better time than now with the delicious last course coming next year, and you know I'm gonna be there for that day one. There's even a Netflix series coming at some point that I'm also super excited for, cause hey, even if you suck at the games, how could you not love these things? You gotta watch it. and even if you don't, you'll never escape them. They're in Arby's now. Cuphead still stands as a favorite amongst indie games as a whole for me, and something I will always enjoy revisiting, so with that, I hope you enjoyed the video, and seeing as it's the season, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that, but most importantly, take care.